welcome to this brand new segment for the Canis podcast called Running the Ropes. This segment is about Canadian wrestlers, and I'll just be giving you some little history about the wrestler matches and like storylines that I've liked about the wrestler and just little tidbits. Today, we'll be talking about Kevin Steen, who also goes by the name of Kevin Owens in WWE. He was born on May 7th, 1984. He was born on May 7th, 1984 in Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu, Quebec. I'd probably butcher that name, but
that's okay.
He was born in Quebec. He's Canadian. That's all that matters. He's wrestled in many different American promotions, but today I'll just talk about like a few major ones that he's been in throughout his career. He's wrestled in CZW, which is Combat Zone Wrestling, from 2004 to 2006, and also a little stint in 2008, where he only won one championship, which was the CZW Ironman Championship, by defeating Frankie the Mobster. So, Victor, you'll learn that in the Indies, there's going to be lots of people that have pretty interesting names.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
So, while he was in CZW, he also fought for another promotion called PWG, which is Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. Their logo is actually a gorilla, so it's actually pretty cool.
Hilarious. Any affiliation with Gorilla Glue?
No. Unfortunately not. He wrestled with that promotion from 2005 to 2008, and then he also returned later in his career in 2010 until 2014. So he had two stints with the promotion. He won the PWG Championship 3 times, beating AJ Styles, which is actually a really well-known wrestler. So Claudio Castagnoli, which is also goes by Cesaro in WWE, for anyone who's wondering, and El Generico, who is like basically like a ginger luchador.
That is the most incredible name analogy I've heard in my life.
It's true though. He also goes by Sami Zayn in WWE, and he unfortunately took off the mask, which is not what you're supposed to do as a luchador, but I digress.
This whole time I'm envisioning Shaun White. Does he look anything like Shaun White?
No.
Okay.
No. He also won the tag team championship twice with El Generico, the ginger luchador, and once with a guy called Super Dragon, which is actually pretty cool. Kevin Steen, I'll call him for this video, also had a stint in ROH. It's their own promotion, but it's like based with like WWE, kind of like the AHL to like the NHL kind of thing.
Okay.
Where like lots of indie wrestlers kind of start their careers and stuff, and then they grow into like other major promotions in the wrestling industry. ROH is Ring of Honor, just so you know. He did wrestle for them from 2007 to 2014, so kind of like a big chunk of his career in like the major promotions, where he won the World Championship once, and he also won the Tag Team Championship with El Generico. So basically, El Generico and Kevin Steen, they're actually really good friends in real life. It's actually pretty cool that they kind of like moved up in the wrestling industry together like as a tag team or feuding against each other. So it's kind of cool to see friends just moving together. Like I said, he had a really good rivalry with El Generico, so I guess with the chemistry that they have together, obviously their matches are really well like received, just because of like kind of like in NHL, kind of like how Connor McDavid has good chemistry with like Leon Draisaitl. It's kind of like the same thing with El Generico and Kevin Steen, because they basically know where they are, don't have to like talk before, like during the match, just because they know what the other person is kind of thinking at the same time. So kind of like that. Kevin Steen also formed a stable which is actually a cool. Their stable name is pretty cool. He formed it with Adam Cole, who is now with AEW, and the Young Bucks, who are also in AEW. Their stable name is called the Mount Rushmore of Wrestling. So it is pretty, pretty interesting name.
So is a stable like just a group that
Stable
fights
is
together? Or?
Yes, stable is kind of like a group. If once you like start watching wrestling, like nowadays, you'll learn like about like the Hurt Business in WWE is a stable. The Bloodline is also a stable. The Elite in AEW is considered a stable. So there's stables or factions, I guess, too, you can say. So just a group of people with like same ideas kind of thing. In August of 2014, he did sign with WWE, starting in the company's quote unquote developmental brand. Nowadays, they kind of like went back to trying it to be a developmental brand, but like the past couple years, they were considered like the third brand because they were actually like really good television to watch. Like their matches were like really, really good back in like the last like 5 years. So, but now it's becoming more developmental again, just so that WWE can develop wrestlers from NXT so that they're ready for the main roster. So for Raw and SmackDown. But anyway, he did win the NXT Championship once, defeating Sami Zayn, who was El Generico. He won the WWE Intercontinental Championship twice, which is kind of like the workhorse championship. So like wrestlers who work really hard would be considered to try to carry the Intercontinental Championship, just because they're like they see the executives that see the wrestlers like working really hard and like think they can like carry it. It's kind of like the second championship to like the major, like the world championship. So kind of like if you can win this championship, you have a good chance of probably winning the world championship. So he won it twice, defeating Ryback and Dean Ambrose. Ryback, who is unfortunately not with WWE anymore, just contract expired, or I guess I think they released him a while ago, and then Dean Ambrose, his contract expired, but he went to AEW afterwards, going by John Moxley now. He also won the United States Championship, defeating Chris Jericho twice. Like he won it twice, defeating him, and beating AJ Styles once. He also won like the major championship. So like there's the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship. Kevin Owens won the Universal Championship after in a fatal four-way match between himself, Big Cass, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins. With a little help of Triple H, but he won in the end, so it doesn't really matter. So wrestlers have like signature moves and finishing moves. His signature move like kind of sets up the finishing move. So he basically used two signature moves in WWE, which I'm going to talk about. So his two signature moves were the bullfrog splash, which is basically a frog splash, but because Kevin Owens is a bigger person instead of just a frog, it's a bullfrog. And he also has this move called the cannonball, which is basically the opponent sitting in the corner, and he would go to the other side of the other corner of the ring and would just run at the person and do like a somersault into the guy. So that, yeah.
Well, that's gotta be like bad for the knees, hey?
No, like he'll do a somersault, so it's like his back will hit the opponent.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
It looks like it hurts. They like wrestlers they learn how to like take the moves, but they also have to sell it to look like as if it like hurt a lot. And obviously with the cannonball,
it probably hurts a good amount.
Yeah, probably hurts a lot. So those are his two signature moves that sets up his finishers, which are he used to use the pop-up powerbomb, which is basically he will throw a guy to the ropes. As the guy is coming back, he lifts him up and just power bombs the guy to the ring. That's what he used to use. Now he uses the stunner, like the Stone Cold Stunner, but it's just the stunner because he's not Stone Cold Steve Austin, obviously, which is actually pretty cool that Stone Cold Steve Austin allowed him to use the stunner. because it's like a really famous finishing move in like wrestling as a whole. So he also performs like this move during his matches, which is a power bomb to the ring apron, which is basically like the corner, or not the corner, like the edge of the ring. So the back of the opponent will hit the corner of the ring, or not the corner, the edge of the ring, sorry. And it looks like it hurts a lot. It probably still does because you're not really trying to like protect yourself with that when you're taking that move. So it's basically one move where you'll just hurt the next day for sure. But yeah, that's basically the history of Kevin Owens, like in a nutshell, basically. I started watching wrestling again in like 2016 or so, and the three people actually that brought me back were Kevin Owens, Kevin Steen, Sami Zayn, and another guy who's unfortunately not Canadian, so I won't really talk about him in depth, but Bray Wyatt. Those three guys brought me back into wrestling after like 7 years of not watching wrestling. My favorite match that he's been in was probably back in 2016 in a pay-per-view called Battlegrounds, where he fought Sami Zayn. And this is my favorite because like the storytelling of the match was really, I guess, well written, because Kevin Owens seemed more like the better guy than Sami Zayn, and with the nonstop action of the match, like just constant, just moves after moves after moves, and just Sami Zayn trying to come back after all those big moves that Kevin Owens deals him. Pretty much just like it's like the underdog, like a very good underdog story. That match, you can totally see the chemistry between those two. Just how like they know what the other person is gonna like dish out, and just keep the story alive so that to keep the fans engaged. That match, just the ending, even though he lost, like Kevin Owens lost, that match kind of solidified like my love for wrestling again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like my favorite storyline though for that includes Kevin Owens is the one that he had with Chris Jericho, who is another Canadian wrestler. Basically, in 2016, Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens kind of like teamed up, formed like a little partnership, kind of became best friends. They would help each other like win matches and everything. At that time, Kevin Owens was the Universal Champion. So Jericho would help him like interfere with the matches and help him win, kind of thing. But back in early 2017, when Goldberg, who was a really famous wrestler back in like the early 2000s, he came back and challenged Kevin Owens for a title shot. Chris Jericho kind of was like, "Yeah, we accept. Kevin Owens can totally beat Goldberg,"
Mm-hmm.
and then that started like the tension between those two. Like it's you saw it before, like tension was rising between the two, but like that moment, it was like the camel that broke. What was it, like the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing?
Right.
So like before the pay-per-view that they were gonna fight, which was called Fastlane, Jericho held like a festival of friendship just to just to tell Kevin Owens how like thankful he was as a friend and all that stuff. Which is funny because Jericho gifted him like a big trophy that was kind of like a spiral, like not it kind of looked like a DNA strand, but not really. But looked kind of funny. And then he also gifted him like a painting that resembled the creation of Adam, like where like God and like Adam were like touching fingers kind of thing. It has Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens doing that, so it looked pretty funny. It looked pretty cool too. It was probably like the best like painting, like wrestling painting, I would say. And Owens, who at like Chris Jericho at the time, his gimmick was like having a list and writing people's names on the list, whoever like annoyed him, kind of thing. So like let's say you annoyed Chris Jericho, he would put you on the list, kind of thing.
Oh.
Yeah. But Kevin Owens gave him a list of KO, and then he kind of like Chris Jericho kind of looked up at Kevin Owens, and Kevin Owens just kind of like beat the crap out of him. So basically, like the team, like the partnership, fell apart. So in the end, Kevin Owens lost his championship to Goldberg because of Chris Jericho, and then later on in WrestleMania, like the major pay per view for WWE, they fought for the U.S. championship. At the time, Chris Jericho had the U.S. championship, and then Kevin Owens won. But like for that feud to end like that, in my opinion, was okay. But I thought like if they fought for like the major championship, it would have been a lot better. Just because Goldberg, who was fighting Brock Lesnar at the time, didn't really need the Universal Championship because obviously Brock Lesnar is a big name. Goldberg is also a big name. They could have brought in lots of views, lots of buys for the pay per view. But Vince McMahon, being Vince McMahon, wanted the title for those two. So they kind of like gave the U.S. title for the Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens storyline, which is fine. But yeah, Kevin Owens is only like 37 years old. Like for wrestling, it's in his prime. So like he still has like a lot of years to give kind of thing. Like he has lots of wrestling to do, and Kevin Owens being Kevin Owens, like he'll definitely be like one of like the best. I would say not the most decorated Canadian wrestler, but like probably like the best like all around Canadian wrestler because his wrestling is great. His mic work, his like promos are really good. Like he doesn't need a script like WWE does for most of their wrestlers. Like they have a script that they have to read out. Kevin Owens can probably like improvise like most of his stuff. It'll be like gold kind of thing. So I guess we'll see what happens next for Kevin Owens in the future because Kevin Owens will be one of those major Canadian wrestlers if younger Canadian teenagers want to go into wrestling. He's probably one of like the best to like look up to. So yeah, that is it for the running the ropes segment of our podcast.
Very cool. So this was like really in depth. I really like that.
Right?
I've learned a lot about Kevin Owens there. So tune in to this weekend's episode where we're going to talk about the Canadian men's national soccer team. Probably their two results this week. We'll talk some more NHL. The season starting up this in a few days now.
Don't forget
And
about NFL.
NFL. We'll talk about the Blue Jays, whether it be the end of their season or in the playoffs. At the moment of recording, we still don't know that. And yeah, lots of stuff happening this week in Canadian sports. So thank you very much for listening to Running the Ropes this week, and we'll look forward to hearing from you guys on Sunday. Thank you very much.